At 10:42 a.m. on May 18, 2024, I checked the polished silver pocket watch my grandfather had left me before pinning my dress uniform one last time. I'm Emily Carter, 31, an Army combat medic. My grandmother Ruth had spent 23 evenings hand-sewing a small protective lining inside the presentation case for my silver star because she wanted everything to be perfect. Then, at exactly 10:43 a.m., my phone vibrated with a message that erased months of hope. 9 months later, that same pocket watch rested silently beside an empty chair. What I didn't understand that morning was that the ceremony wasn't the real test. The years leading to it had quietly decided who would stand beside me long before my name was ever announced. In my family, achievement was measured by one invisible scoreboard. Every holiday, every birthday, every conversation somehow circled back to my younger brother, Daniel. His business deals earned framed photographs on the hallway wall, while my deployments earned polite silence. The silver pocket watch became my private reminder that one person's respect could outweigh a room full of indifference. Grandma Ruth always noticed when I wore it. She would straighten my collar, brush invisible lint from my sleeve, and whisper that Grandpa would have been proud. Looking back, I can't pretend I was only a victim. I laughed off the comparisons, changed uncomfortable subjects, and accepted smaller places at family gatherings because keeping peace felt easier than asking why my service always came second. The invitation for the Silver Star ceremony went out on February 6th by email, followed by printed copies mailed the same week. Dad replied, "We'll be there," in the family group chat. 2 weeks later, he confirmed again while my aunt and uncle listened over Sunday lunch. I even forwarded hotel details on April 28th and received a thumbs-up emoji. When Grandma smiled with relief, Dad shrugged and repeated the line he had used for years. "Know your place." Everyone laughed lightly, and I convinced myself it was only another careless joke instead of the warning it had always been. On May 18th, 2024, at exactly 10:43 a.m., my phone buzzed while I stood in the preparation room outside the auditorium. I smiled before unlocking it because I assumed Dad was asking where to park. Instead, the message contained only 3 short sentences. "I'm not coming. Daniel's investor luncheon matters more. You're this family's biggest shame." A minute later, another text followed, almost like an afterthought. "Know your place." I looked up from the screen and saw Grandma's carefully stitched silver star presentation case resting on the table beside my white gloves. Months of love sat inches away from a message that treated my biggest day as an inconvenience. Grandma didn't ask to read the texts. She watched my face, understood enough, and quietly reached for the presentation case instead. She smoothed one corner with her fingertips and said, "The stitching held." That's what matters. There were no tears, no dramatic speeches, only that gentle sentence. Somehow her calm acceptance hurt far more than anger ever could have. It forced me to realize she had probably expected disappointment long before I did. As the ceremony staff called names in the hallway, memories began lining up inside my head with uncomfortable clarity. Dad skipped my graduation from combat medic school because Daniel was presenting a sales report. He mailed me a generic birthday card during my second deployment, but flew across 3 states for Daniel's company anniversary dinner. When I returned home after 11 months overseas, he asked whether I planned to find a normal job now. Every small moment I had excused suddenly fit together into one complete picture. The hardest truth wasn't that Dad had failed me. It was that I had helped protect the system that kept failing me. Every time a relative apologized for him, I accepted it. Every time Daniel became the center of another family celebration, I smiled for photographs instead of asking why everyone else's milestones counted more than mine. Silence had become my contribution to the unfairness. After the ceremony, I called my Aunt Linda first. She sighed before I even finished explaining. "Don't make this into a family issue," she said. "Your father has a lot on his shoulders." My Uncle Robert wasn't much different. "He's old-fashioned," he told me. "Just let this pass. The medal is still yours." Their words sounded practical, but each sentence quietly asked me to carry someone else's choices without complaint. The first person who reacted differently was Captain Marcus Hayes, the officer who had supervised me during my last deployment. He listened without interrupting, then asked one simple question. If another soldier told you this story, would you tell her to keep chasing approval? I answered immediately. No. He nodded once. Then stop giving advice to yourself that you'd never give to someone you promised to protect. That was the first moment anyone gave me permission to believe I deserved better. Even then, I wasn't ready to walk away. The next morning, I called Dad and offered the easiest compromise I could imagine. We can have dinner next weekend, I said. No speeches, no arguments. Just Grandma, you, Daniel, and me. We don't have to talk about yesterday. He didn't hesitate. I'm not pretending your choices deserve celebrating, he replied. Know your place. If you keep bringing this up, don't expect this family to stand with you. You'll embarrass everyone, you'll divide your relatives, and you'll have nobody left to blame except yourself. In that moment, I finally understood he wasn't protecting the family. He was protecting the ranking system that had always placed me at the bottom. I stopped trying to earn a better place inside a family that measured love like a competition. Instead, I decided to build a table where nobody had to compete for a chair. The community center beside Fort Campbell had a small banquet room available the following Saturday, so I reserved it with my own savings. I still placed one empty chair near the front with my father's name on it. That wasn't hope anymore. It was proof that the door had been open all along. I kept thinking, you cannot heal inside a system that depends on your silence. The night before the gathering, I opened my phone and wrote the message I wanted to send Dad. The first draft read, Asterisk, one day you'll regret choosing appearances over your own daughter. Asterisk, I deleted it. The second draft was even harsher. Asterisk, don't ever call yourself my father again. Asterisk, that disappeared too. The message I finally sent was only 3 sentences. Asterisk, we're celebrating with the people who chose to be present. Your chair will remain available until the ceremony begins. I sincerely hope you come. Asterisk, his reply arrived 14 minutes later. Asterisk, do whatever you want. Asterisk, nothing more. No apology. No explanation. Just another reminder that indifference can wound as deeply as anger. The room filled anyway. 27 people came. Some were soldiers I had served beside, others were neighbors, nurses, and friends who had known me long before the medal. Someone burned the dinner rolls, 2 children laughed too loudly during the speeches, and the microphones stopped working twice. It was imperfect in every possible way, yet it felt warmer than any flawless family gathering I could remember. When the moment came, Grandma Ruth carefully placed the silver star display case on the table beneath my grandfather's silver pocket watch. She stood beside it with steady hands and quietly explained how she had stitched the protective lining herself because medals deserved to be cared for by people who understood sacrifice. Everyone applauded her before they applauded me. Later that evening, my cousin Megan called from the hotel where Dad had attended Daniel's investor banquet. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, the food cost nearly $200 a plate, and several guests had already left before dessert. She said the room looked expensive but strangely empty. Dad spent most of the evening discussing business while barely touching his meal. Hearing that didn't make me feel victorious. It only confirmed that appearances could fill a ballroom without filling a life. Driving home, I realized winning wasn't the right word for what had happened. I still wished my father had been there when my name was called. No gathering, no matter how loving, could erase that absence. Before leaving, Captain Hayes quietly told me something Grandma had once shared with him. Dad had grown up believing affection had to be earned through status, because that was all he had ever been shown. It explained him without excusing him. As I locked the silver star beside my grandfather's pocket watch, one thought stayed with me. Understanding someone's pain does not require surrendering to it. 9 months passed before Dad appeared at my front door on February 22, 2025 at 4:18 p.m. I saw his truck through the living room window and let him wait almost 8 minutes before opening the door. It wasn't revenge. For the first time in my life, I refused to rearrange myself around his schedule. He stepped inside holding no gift, no speech, only an uneasy silence. He tried the familiar approach first, saying the family had already talked enough about the ceremony and everyone should move on. When that failed to change my expression, he tried guilt instead, reminding me that people make mistakes and families shouldn't keep score. Neither argument worked anymore because I wasn't asking him to defend himself. After several quiet moments, he looked around the room, noticed my silver star displayed beside Grandpa's silver pocket watch, and asked one question I never expected to hear. "Do you really believe there's still a place for me here?" I answered carefully. "There can be, but not because I'm ready. Because Grandma deserves the apology she never asked you to give." He nodded without arguing. A few minutes later, he walked into the kitchen where Grandma Ruth was making tea. The conversation between them lasted nearly 20 minutes behind the closed door. I never listened through the wall. Some moments become more meaningful when they belong entirely to the people who earned them. When they returned, Grandma's eyes were damp and Dad looked smaller somehow. She simply squeezed his hand before sitting back down. Life didn't suddenly become perfect after that afternoon. We created something quieter instead. On the first Sunday of every month, everyone gathered for dinner at my house. There were no assigned seats, no speeches comparing careers, and no invisible scoreboard hanging over the table. Dad began arriving early without being asked. One afternoon, he carefully wound Grandpa's silver pocket watch before placing it beside the silver star display, then stepped back without saying a word. That small gesture meant more than another promise ever could. Grandma eventually donated copies of my ceremony photographs to the local veteran center, saying young service members deserve to see what steady courage looked like. For the first time, Dad stood beside those photographs without trying to stand in front of them. The pocket watch still reminds me of 10:43 a.m., of 23 evenings of careful stitching, and of one empty chair that changed everything. My father declined to attend my Silver Star ceremony, but he eventually learned that respect cannot be inherited, demanded, or ranked. The people who truly honor your life are the ones who choose to show up before they ask to be forgiven.